Welcome, welcome. I'm Brad Hartman, and I'd like to welcome you to this very special gathering. You're here because you all took the time to listen to the interview with Patricia Ladara, and you were gracious enough to accept our invitation to come and visit and to ask questions. And it's our goal that you learn more about Patricia's 20-year journey about being a soul passage midwife, and perhaps more importantly, embrace her message that death is not something that's to be feared, but to be celebrated. And it's Patricia's hope that she'll learn something about what interests you about her work. Patricia is researching different ways to bring this work into the world, including developing a workbook and even a series of workshops that will follow in the coming months. So how did the three of us sitting up here all come together, you might want to know? A wonderful series of events have connected the three of us. Erica Jackman, who is an accomplished art therapist and yoga instructor, she and I met back in April at a local coffee shop and discovered that we were both on very similar spiritual paths. And then a few months later, Patricia and Erica met each other at an event in Denver, where they also experienced a very strong spiritual connection. Later, when Erica invited Patricia to visit her here in Colorado Springs to see how Erica's art therapy might be tied in to the soul passage midwife practice of Patricia, she felt moved to invite me to join into this group. And what I bring to this is my work as a musician in hospice, and also I have a communications and marketing background. And when we had this meeting, which happened maybe 6 weeks ago, there was a lot of synergy that was just really quite incredible, and we felt very compelled to start working together to try to bring Patricia's message and her work out to the world. So this is culminated in today's Q&A session. Very quickly, we will turn this over to Patricia and to you. But first, I'd like Erica to come up and just have a few words. Erica Jackman.
Well, hello. So when we're doing this session, we have here a wireless microphone. We're going to just pass this around to people who are asking questions. We were going to record this so that we can keep track of the questions so that we know what your interests are and how to progress with the work. And without anything else to say, I think I've covered everything. Here's Patricia.
Well, good afternoon. How are you all? Brad, thank you. Erica, thank you for putting this all together. If I had to do it, it would never happen. I really am quite content living in the forest and walking people to the other side. I could spend the rest of my life doing that and never leave the forest. But it seems that there are other things that need to happen, so here we are. The first thing I'd like to tell you, number one, is that not only can I walk other people to the other side, but each of you can walk other people to the other side. And it is because we are all souls. We come here for a time to learn, to grow, to whatever our particular corner of the world happens to be. And then we return, and while we're here, we can do so much more than we think we can do. So the connection is, we go into our hearts, and from our hearts we connect to our souls, and from our souls we connect to the universe at large, or with the Great Spirit, or with God, Goddess, whatever anybody would like to call that. And from there we can very easily communicate soul to soul. Now, the reason this has become an issue for us, I think it's a very normal thing. I mean, probably in ancient times we came knowing how to do all these things, but we have forgotten. And we have embraced the left brain with great ferocity. And there's nothing wrong with the left brain. Indeed, it is a wonderful, wonderful servant. But it was never meant to be in charge. And when we let it be in charge, it takes us on such a trip we can just hardly keep up with it. So a lot of what the learning that we have to do is really unlearning or embracing more right brain activities and more heartful activities. And then things open up really pretty naturally. When my mother was dying, of course, I had, as you all heard on that talk, no idea what was going to happen. Now, how absurd is that? I mean, we have this whole system set up where we pass it from person to person to person so we all can be prepared when our time comes. And yet, we pulled the plug on that. And so then when we reach that part of our journey, or if our parents are going, or if we have a child that's going, we don't know what to do. And thank goodness for hospice. I mean, when I was little, hospice wasn't here. And I remember with my grandparents. But by the time my dad went, hospice came up into the high mountains so that I was able to have him at home for an entire year before he passed on, and he slipped away very quietly and peacefully from my home. How beautiful is that? I mean, it's just wonderful. So big kudos to hospice and all the growth that it has made and shared, and all the families that it's helped through all of these years. The other thing is, what was the other thing? This is a process of remembering. It's not we're learning something new that we've never, ever done before. We have done it, but we've just forgotten. But it's a big just. When I was walking my mother across and I had that recognition that I had done this hundreds, thousands of times maybe, I was so amazed at that moment. I almost just stopped walking. But so it is a remembering process. So you just need to know that and give yourself a lot of credit. And the other thing is, it is an unfolding process. It is not, you start here and you have a list and you know that exactly what the journey is going to be. There are twists and turns. It is an unfolding. We have to listen and allow it to happen. But we all can do that. We all are very fluent in these things once we've had the experience. We just go, oh, how could I have forgotten? That's really a huge question. How could we have forgotten? So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you, because I really want you to know that we all can do this. And I have up here, this is so I don't forget to tell you this, I have just a little prayer basket here. If any of you have loved ones going and would like me to check in on them, I'm really deeply honored to do that. But if you could just fill out one of these little cards and put your name and the city and state of the loved one, and then your name and contact information if you would like for me to call you. I do this all the time. It is my practice. Every morning, every night, I'm always checking in on beings from wherever they are. And if they need assistance, then off we go. And if they don't, it's been a great connection and off they go anyway. So, you all have questions. And I'm hoping I have some answers.
I had an unfortunate, but I am very grateful for this experience. About 2.5 years ago, I remembered that I had been sexually abused by my father. And at the time, I had my master's. I had a great job in Denver, but I kind of crashed. I crumpled. I was 50 at the time. My daughter had been saying for years that my father had sexually abused her, and one day the therapist asked me why I couldn't believe it. And I was getting up to leave, and I fell back onto her little couch and went into a fetal position. Mm-hmm. By the time I reached my husband's truck, I'd convinced myself it hadn't happened. However, it changed my life, and I'm grateful that it changed my life. But I had a very unusual experience that continued to happen. At 10 o'clock a.m. every morning, between 10 and 10:30, I would feel as if I walked into a dark cloud. And I didn't have to see a clock. I would go, eventually I put together that it was happening at the same time. I believe in reincarnation. I know that we have lived before. I had experienced past lives. So I practice EMDR with a therapist who is an amazing woman and allowed me to cross the borders of, you know, your black and white left brain kind of EMDR, and EMDR isn't, to me, very left-brained anyway. And I realized that something had happened at that time to this person. And there she is. I was just talking about you, Mary. And I realized that her name was Hannah and that she was me. And I went there, and she was laying on a gurney, and the doctors weren't paying. She was in a hospital, and the doctors weren't paying attention to her, and I couldn't understand why. I knew she felt devastated, that she was incredibly sad, and that's what I was feeling. And my mom had just lost her sister right around that time, and she said, well, maybe she already died and she is lost. And she knew that because her husband said that her sister had died and that the doctors stopped doing stuff, and he couldn't understand. He's illiterate and he's not educated, and he didn't know why the doctors weren't doing something. Then it made sense to me. I had also been going through a period where I was writing suicide letters. It was a very dark time.
Yeah.
And I realized that this woman who was wearing clothes kind of the 1800s had something that she needed to tell her then husband. She was devastated that she actually did die. She was attempting suicide. I don't think she was expecting that it would lead to death. I don't know why she did it, but she was tortured by it. Once my mom said that, I knew she was right. So I went there. I felt as if when I explained to her what had happened and the oddness of it sort of being an incarnation of me, I felt as if I was not allowed to go with her, that I could take her there to the door. But when you say we can all do it, is it just believing that, or is there something you do to cross that line? Is it practice?
I think it is. It is an opening, and the only reason we have to work to get that opening is because we have closed it down. You know, this is why people have meditation practices that take years, because it's a constant, ongoing thing that we all have to work on when we're here. And really, I feel like one of the reasons is because everything here is so compelling. I mean, we believe that absolutely everything here is what it all is, and we have kind of a left brain association with over there, whatever that is. So you're trying to tie those things together, and it is from the soul perspective that you can do that. As you, the personality, probably it's not going to happen because it's your soul that needs to go on. So you need to have the connection with your soul as a being. And I know that this can actually take time because I'm one of those people that was very, very ill at age 33 and nearly died many times over. And there were lots of physiological reasons for all of this. But as I moved on, I really wanted to know what the spiritual reason was. I was told that I was in conflict with my soul. Now, my teeth just dropped at hearing that. And I thought, how is that even possible? I mean, we're all here. Our souls are a part of us and blah, blah, blah. And it took me a very long time to try to come to terms with this. Well, how could I not know my soul? What is it that my soul wants me to do that I don't want to do? So at 33, I was teaching at a university in Texas, working on my PhD, blah, blah, doing all these things. And my soul didn't want me to go that direction. And so severe was that problem that I was very seriously ill. But the outgrowth of it was, because I was so ill, I spent years by myself, literally. I couldn't be around people. And my immune system had collapsed and everybody was, it didn't totally or I wouldn't be alive, but, it really wasn't functioning very well. And so I spent much of that time in the forest. And in the forest, I befriended all the creatures and the trees and the flowers and there are lots of beings. And it's all consciousness, and we all, we can communicate with all of these beings. And so the outgrowth of that was, after I could communicate with all of these other beings, the light bulb went on, well, maybe I can communicate with my own soul. How cool would that be? And indeed you can. But it is a process, and we just don't wake up one morning. Well, I mean, we might, but certainly when I walked my mother across, it was a sudden awakening. But before that, I had been all of this time in the forest. So I would think that it would be really good for you to work on getting to know your soul, and that then at some point you would understand much better how to go farther. And
when I listened to what you said, that's when I went, oh my gosh, I think my left brain took over, and I thought, there's a line, and that's what you're taught, and you can't cross that line. Some people come back, but that's if something horrific happens and they have no control over it, you're hit by a car or whatever. And I think now, if I'd known then what I know now, I may have opened myself up to allow that type of experience.
Allowing is exactly it. The personality and the left brain, they just can't really go to these places. They have a much different purpose. And this morning when I woke up, this is what my left brain was telling me. What do you mean you're not going to have a paper? How are you going to talk to all these people without a paper? I didn't write anything down. I didn't feel the need to write anything down. You all were coming with questions. I want to be really present with your questions. I don't want to have some big, long agenda. The left brain went crazy, just crazy. And so I thought, well, I think I'll just observe this and see where it goes, and how should we handle this today? So I gave it an assignment. I said, okay, well, this is what I want you to do. I want you to remember this little quote, and we could use it as sort of a little blessing for our gathering. Now let's see if I can remember it. That was its task. I look with wonder, awe, and reverence to the sustaining power of my life and all life. So I drove down here with my left brain running that tape, which was a very positive tape to listen to while I'm on this journey, rather than, what, you don't have a paper, you don't have anything written down? I mean, what are we going to choose to listen to? That was just very beautiful. And it feels quite lovely to have that going on. Simultaneously, while that's going on, it could remember, oh, turn on the left blinker, or watch out for that car over there. So, you know, giving it an assignment is a really great thing, and it can hold it for us. And in fact, when I'm walking people across, you know, I have a very busy life. I'm a single mom, and I have a teenager, and it's all very wonderful, but very, very busy. I am a person who likes to be in the forest. So a lot of times when I have people and I have their names in my prayer basket, you know, I need to keep touching in. I don't know when they're going to go. I have no idea what their day of passing might be. And so I touch in every single day with every single person that I have on my list. And that left brain is great for helping me to keep that throughout my day. You know, I'm going to the grocery store, I'm picking up my daughter, we're going here, we're going there, and a lot of driving, a lot of, you know how it is. And it'll kick in. Oh, you better think about Susan or Emily. So, you know, there's all kinds of functions that our brain has, and if we can help it to be purposeful and in alignment with what it does best, then it can be very wonderful. Now, meanwhile, if I didn't give my mind that assignment, you know, I would have. Well, you need to say this, and then you need to say this, and oh, if you say this, you got to say this, and then you have to go over here. I mean, it just goes on, and the list just keeps growing. So it's something to get to know these minds, and there is a way to work with it, and there are lots of yoga practices out there that are wonderfully helpful for all of that. Creative process, essential. Eric and I are very connected on this level, because creative process is where we begin listening and allowing and letting things unfold, or else the creation does not occur. We can't say, okay, it's going to be this. All artists know that. They start with a something, and it unfolds. So another aspect of it is interdimensional communication, which I just touched on very briefly, but you learn that in the forest. I mean, it is the greatest place in the world. There are many, many beings out there, and they gladly will speak with you. And so it's all the same kind of place in consciousness that we want to go. And being able to practice while we're here is an essential component. And it seems like we're going off in the wrong direction, but we're not. Because we don't have it in our culture. That's the issue. I mean, we have it, but, you know, not enough. It's very limited. Okay, you can do that over here. So, someone else has a question? Okay.
By the way, it never happened again after I went there and met with her on that level, and she crossed. It never occurred again. The morning and feeling like I walked into a dark cloud or this devastation, it was gone. So I know that I helped her cross. But now I think, after having listened to your interview, I would love to have said, let's go together, you know, and gone across.
Yeah, and we will want to do that, but it's not always necessary. I mean, you went there and you were in this dark place. Maybe she was in a really, really dark place and just needed some company, and then she was free to go. I mean, how wonderful is that? It's just beautiful. We don't ever know what souls are going to need. You know, sometimes they'll just ask a question and they'll be gone. Sometimes they need a lot, sometimes very little, and it's not up to us to decide that. It's up to them, and we stay open. So you did a really wonderful thing by
going to be present in that space.
Overachievers, and it sounds like you can identify with this. You know, I look back and I think, well, I could have done more and I could have gone across, and it is hard to remember that there's often a purpose for why things happen the way they do.
Exactly. Well done. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I recently lost my husband to brain cancer. He was super healthy, and then one day he just dropped, had a stroke, and basically I was his caregiver for about 15 months along with my 3 children. And you're talking about left brain. That guy was the most left brain person I ever met in my life. He lived in it. He was a database engineer, systems architect, all this. So he's a very intelligent man, and it was very difficult to see him go. Toward the end, we had hospice at home. You were discussing hospice. Wonderful.
Yeah.
When in California, we were living in San Jose when this happened. My husband was at home, throughout, unless he had an emergency, and he passed fairly quickly. And I had friends tell me that you will get a sign. Like, I kept my mind open. Just as he was going, I tried to speak with him. I don't know if you've probably read the book, and Brad, I think, is reading it now. What's the name of it, Brad? The book you're reading again? Proof of Heaven. And wonderful book. And I told my husband about this book, about that he could be passing into this wonderful world. But being a man in his left brain, I wasn't sure whether he would really believe in that, even with after having a extensive brain damage and all that from the stroke. But I waited. I've been waiting for a sign, basically, from him, and I have a very open mind, and I'm hoping someday I do receive a sign that he's okay and made it over there. And he died very quickly. My whole family was with him. And we were all like, rubbing his hands, and he died very peacefully. But friends of mine said that they received signs that they knew that their loved one had made it over to the other side or was happy. And actually, my brother and I experienced that with my father, who died in 2006. We received separate signs that we knew that he had made it, and he was giving us a sign that he was okay, or thanking my brother for looking after him, my mom as well. But I never received that, and I haven't, from my husband, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are about this process. And if I keep my mind open, will it happen?
It might. Yeah, we really, we can't make that happen. We have to just listen and be aware, and it'll come when it comes. Now, time over there is so different. He might feel like he just got there. And they are busy when they're there. There's a whole new life going on. It's not like they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs or thinking about nothing. It's very full and busy. So I would think if you had been open enough before to hear that you are still open, maybe it just is taking a little longer. The husband-wife relationship is really, really close.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And
it did seem to bring him peace. Like the proof of heaven is that a neuroscientist had meningitis and almost died. And it was his experience of passing over to the other side. So I explained this to my husband, who would have been normally, under normal circumstances, very critical of that, like, yeah, right, there's a heaven, or, my husband didn't want any, he wanted a celebration, I think, at the end, rather than a Christian type of thing, no genuflection, no cross, and that's what we did. We honored his wishes and everything. But I told him the story of Proof of Heaven the day before he died, and he squeezed my hand like he kind of understood and seemed to be open to the idea. So that gave me some peace, but
yeah, it would.
I would just feel so much better if I got to say, it's for me, I'm a very open person. I probably live more in my right brain than the left, possibly, and I'm just hoping just to know he's okay and that there's a better place, so that's why I wanted to bring that up with you. And Brad told me about your story, and I was, very open to that, because many of us have had these experiences before a loved one has died, and then know that they're okay.
And you can put in a request. Just write a simple prayer request and write it down, because that's something solid and physical on this plane. And to simply say, I really would like to know for certain that you are fine. And you will hear. I think with the openness that you have, it would come. Yeah.
I would love to have the experiences you've had. I think that would be absolutely amazing.
Well, it is amazing. And it is, I can tell you, it's not like this panacea where you never have any worries anymore. You see this, and I had a cat that died in Santa Fe, and I couldn't go with him. I don't know why. I think it was so hard for us to say goodbye that I didn't get to do that with him. And it was like, 10 years later when I finally saw where he was and knew. So it's not, their time is so different that
I hope I don't have to wait for my husband for 10 years.
Yes.
He better answer me this year. Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Come on.
My mother has dementia right now, and she and I did not have a very good relationship, and I am praying for some resolution with her, but I'm wondering if you have any suggestions of things I might do with her soul to kind of help the resolution, help her passing, etc. Any comments would be appreciated.
So is she close to passing, or is she spending some days in dementia before she gets to the passing part?
She's spending days in dementia, yeah, and she's getting increasingly worse, so.
Is she? Mm-hmm. Because that's always a difficult process, to watch our loved ones lose that capacity. But really her soul is fine, and your soul is fine. So the more that you can be in that place and try to communicate with her on that level, the better it will be. If you're on this level trying to communicate with her and she's not able to respond, then it's a continuous frustration. And see it, I would look at it as kind of like a longer bridge to crossing. She's undoubtedly spending time out and about in the universe, because that's what souls do. And they can be very busy doing other things, other places, while we are here doing who knows what. That's been a really interesting thing to learn. And I learned that because people would tell me, well, your spirit was standing at the foot of my bed last night. And I'm like, really? What was she doing? Like, this might be across the country or anywhere. And how come I don't know that she's doing this? And I don't know. I had no idea, but it was one of the things that compelled me to try to get in touch with my soul, because she really is very busy. And so it seemed to me that if you can think of this as a slower process of moving towards crossing, and know in your heart that her soul is fine and beautiful, and your soul is fine and beautiful, and try to have the very loving connections from that perspective. Because if you had a difficult relationship, there's lots of forgiveness that goes on. You know, before my mother died, I hadn't seen her for 5 years. It was a really, this is kind of a strange thing. My parents were really angry at me because I did not go to the Mayo Clinic when I was sick. I knew if I went to the Mayo Clinic, I would die. It was plain and simple. And I didn't know how I was going to get well. I had no clue. We didn't have all the options then that we have now. I was 33. And I didn't know that that's why they were upset with me. But for 5 years, we could not talk. And it was excruciating, because I loved my family very much. I could not figure out what was going on. And it wasn't until after that 5-year period that we finally were able to talk. And one of the questions I asked my mother was, why did you keep calling me? They would call me once a week and ask me what the weather was and hang up. Now here I was dying. I mean, you know, I'm just like, really, you guys, I don't get what this is. And she said simply, I wanted to keep the door open. I went, well, there you go. If you keep the door open, it's much easier to, you know, open it fully than if it's slammed shut altogether. So in her own way and with her own wisdom, that's what transpired. Now, before I walked her to the other side, I went through a very long process of forgiving my family. What seemed to me was that they had deserted me in my greatest hour of need. I was clearly dying, and because I wouldn't go to the Mayo Clinic, they wouldn't help me? I mean, what is that about? But really, many of us are that attached to Western medicine. And it's not that Western medicine doesn't have lots of things that it can do well, but there are lots of things it can't do, and there are other things that can take its place. And it's okay to be open to all of them. It's a really great thing. It would help solve our healthcare crisis tremendously. So I worked on this for a long time, and what I finally came to was, you know what? I love my parents. I really do. I just love them. Plain and simple. And then I thought, well, they don't know how to build this bridge. Their life is what it is. They don't know how to build the bridge. So I will have to build the bridge. And I built it. And I think, so by the time we got to this dying process, I had already been through the whole forgiveness thing and realized that from their perspective, they just could not see another way. And from my perspective, I couldn't really see another way. But it was okay because we really did love each other very, very much. And I got to be with both of my parents when they crossed. And I was deeply touched that they wanted me to be there. And so deeply touched that we could mend this rift completely and totally. And how blessed is that? I mean, if we don't do another thing when we're here, that's a beautiful thing to do. So
take that in and just keep being with your mom. Her soul is fine. Just know that. That brings strength, just knowing that. And she may need a long bridge to get across. And the dementia, while there's lots of physiological reasons, just like there was for me, it provides a beginning to that bridge, a beginning of withdrawing from what we perceive is so real. So she might be learning lots and lots of things that will help her cross much more easily when it's her time. And otherwise, forgiveness is a great thing, and loving, and good luck with that. Mm-hmm.
How are you present with someone? Like I work with some people who are dying, and you know, you just do all the nursing stuff.
Right.
But what do you do to be present with them when you cross over with them? Just you're not doing it physically, of course.
Right. I sing.
So you're more comforting. I mean, you're not actually experiencing what they're experiencing.
Not in the body, but in the greater world, it seems to be I'm witnessing what they're doing, and if I need to help them do anything or answer any questions, then I'm there. And so if I am in the room with a person, a lot of times I do this long distance because people call me from all over to be with their loved ones. But if you're in the room and you can focus on the breath, I mean, really, for nurses, I don't know how you guys do it because there's so many, all these things beeping and all these things going on, and you've got 100 people to take care of, and you're running around doing all these things. So if you're sitting there with someone, you need to go deep, deep inside. Really physically breathe into your heart. And that will help you get into that place. And then you're sending them enormous love. I mean, we've got all of the love in the universe with us at that moment. Well, we always have it, but, you know, at that moment it just feels stronger. And keep sending that love. And
well, these people generally have their families with them, so they're doing that job.
Okay.
I would think you would be doing this for someone you love. I mean, I'm sure the way you felt for your mother was different than the way you felt for people that just write to you and tell you about their ones that are passing. Is it all the same to you?
I think the love is so tremendous that when you are with that love, you are that love. And that goes to all beings. And yes, our families are near and dear, but I cry with every person who says goodbye to this level. Because it is a change. We do miss them. No matter who they are, they've brought something to our world, and they will be missed on this level. I cry. And that love that pours through is for all beings. And I feel the depth of that love with every single person that I cross. It is such a deep, deep honor to be with somebody at this point. And these are people who are saying they would like my help. I mean, I'm so deeply touched that they would want to share anything with me because they oftentimes don't know me. But the depth of that love and the purity of that love just pours out. So I would think as a nurse, you're around then a lot of people who are transitioning. Are you a hospice nurse?
I've worked with a lot of hospice people who were in hospice, yeah.
So you're needing to be in
I mean, yeah.
different places at once.
Well, I mean, you feel, you feel sorry for the family. I mean, by that time, that person is usually ready to go,
Right.
when they're in hospice. And of course, you feel sorry for the family, but I was just interested in how you're there. I mean, I guess I just see a physical person that's just passing on, and many times I've likened it to a birth. People sitting around waiting for this person to die, and it does seem more like a transition. Like I've said it before, it's like waiting for somebody to be born or waiting for a birth. I've sensed that. So I'm interested in how how do you do this? Because you were very descriptive about going through the fog, carrying your mom,
Right.
handing her over. I mean, do you do this for everybody?
I do this for everybody, whoever comes to me. But it is different every single time, which is why it's so fascinating. It's not like we can say every time, okay, the fog's going to be there, or okay, this is going to be there. Okay, now you're going to see the flower garden on the left. Okay, now just right down the street, you're going to see the waterfall. It isn't, I don't ever know. The most recent person that I walked actually was a person who had Lou Gehrig's disease, and she decided to have her life support systems disconnected. Courageous move. I mean, really, how many of us are ready to do something that dramatic? But she didn't want to live that way anymore. All the support systems were, that was her life. And she'd been doing it since December. And so I knew the day and the time that she was going to be leaving. And they disconnected the systems. She was up and out. And we were in the most beautiful, wonderful, I spent an hour with her just in this, what we're calling a transition spot before her full transition, because she needed for her frequency to change. It was so sudden, and she'd been so in the third dimension, just right here on all the support systems. And she needed like a little time to adjust. And so I got to spend all this time. There was a pool where she was swimming, and there was a wonderful swing and beautiful gardens. And we just walked and talked and swam, and this frequency changed. And I watched it change, or more accurately, I felt it change. And then from 5 directions, not 4, not 6, from 5 directions, when she was ready, her ancestors came in and circled around her, and then she was on her way to where she was going. So, and you've heard the things I said on the talk. I mean, they're all different. We don't ever know. But for a nurse to know that really it is a birth and it is a celebration, that would help your day. I mean, you're walking in there with a sense of joy, and certainly you still have compassion for the loss that people are feeling.
Yeah, I feel that, but like the people I work with are old. And they're
ready to go.
They've lived their life.
Right.
I would have a problem, I think, with younger people. Have you worked with younger people, or people who have died in violent accidents, or where they didn't have time to have this nice preparation?
Yeah, a lot of people don't have time for a nice preparation. It happens, but they get ready, and. The thing about doing the preparation is that we all learn so much through the process, not just the person who is dying, but all of the people who are with them, and then that helps us be prepared for our own crossing. So it's not a must, but it's a beautiful gift for us. We're missing so much by not having it. But for people in accidents that go quickly, there's help for everybody, no matter what. And They will go where they need to go. We do have the sense of celebration. We are sad at the same time, but we can let that go because the celebration is the light that pierces the grief. And so to walk into a room with that, to me, would help the person who's gone not feel pulled down so much. Because all of the grieving that we do is pulling and tugging. They can break free anyway eventually, but they feel a lot. Pets, we go through this with pets. And I'll tell you, I learned something wonderful from a dog recently that went across. Her name was Ginger, and then it'll be time for a break. She, before her crossing, she wanted to let her family know that her life was so great, and she wanted to honor them in the deepest way she possibly could. So here I am, Patricia, sitting with the dog. I don't know what's going to happen. It's really... So she starts her crossing, and she stops, turns around, faces that family, and sends them this love that we are talking about, that is the purity that we are all made of. I mean, it is... Love just isn't even the right word, is kind of the problem. We only have one word to describe this. She sits there and she focuses on her family, and she sends them love for 12 hours to pierce the grief that they were feeling at her passing. Now, isn't that so deeply, deeply touching? And this is the animal kingdom. And they are made of the same consciousness, just a different form. So, as much as if we don't go into the grief, to be into the middle of it, like this lady was in that box. Once you're in the box, it's hard to feel anything else. It's like if you smashed... Now, in her case, she was in the box, but that was the right thing to do, so that's actually not a good example, is it? No, it turned out well. Let's see. Let me reframe this. If you smashed your finger with a hammer, and it turns all black, if your consciousness is in the middle of that finger, you can imagine the chaos that's going on, and the emergency bells, and everything. Oh, this is never going to work out. What are we going to do with all this? It's a mess. But you, outside of that finger, I'll put some ice on it and I'll send it love and it'll be fine. And you just know that, and it heals. And it's the same way with this. I mean, we're outside of, even though we're all of it because we're multidimensional beings, you don't have to stay just in one place. And when you're going from room to room, you're going to, if you know it's a birth, you just carry that with you every room you walk into. And yes, the family's going to be sad. And yes, they'll feel your goodness and your love. And maybe that'll help pierce their grief. You're not going to go in there and be blowing bubbles and, confetti and things. But your presence, how you're present with them, will be different. You're not going to be in the middle of the thumb. You're not going to be in the middle of the story. You're in a more expanded awareness and knowing that, okay, this is a transition from here to there, and that person is fine, whether it was a suicide, whether it was an accident, whether it was whatever it was, it is going to be fine. And they will go where they're meant to go. And the more we can learn, the better we'll handle it. Does that help? I don't know what.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a way of just letting go. Like, you have to let go of barriers in your mind.
And a belief system. I mean, we have a huge investment in our belief systems. And we can toss them out and be someplace else. We don't have to keep the same belief systems in place. And, we can try in little ways. Okay, I'm going to try this way today. I'm going to try this way tomorrow. And just see what really works for me, because we're all also really individual. And what works for me or for you might not work for the next person necessarily. We're honing in on a process that's very beautiful but doesn't have a very precise map. But we have a general guide. Just even knowing it can be a celebration, that changes everything. The dog knew it. The dog was in consciousness, really, really aware, and really loved that family. So you can pierce the grief in little ways. It might not be the whole thing, but each time you step in, there's another little opening. And it opens little by little by little by little. And it's always in the moment. It's not like we're handed something that says, okay, this is how it is. Well, even though I'm sort of saying that, but it's a moment-to-moment process. You're not going to know before you walk in the room, except that you have this idea that it is a birth and it's a celebration, and you're going to meet it. You're going to meet it with as much grace and purity and love as you can, and then it unfolds from there. And each one will be different.
Even if they don't know, because you do this so often, it's something that you're used to, there must be signs. Can you tell by looking at them?
Not by looking, but by feeling, because the energy changes. It actually speeds up before the body leaves, the spirit leaves, the soul leaves, whoever leaves. Yes, ma'am.
Just have a quick question about Ginger. Do you think the love that she was sending to her family, do you know for a fact whether the family actually felt that?
Yes.
Can this love traverse to the other side, to us who can't can't think the same way or are not in the same plane, dimension, or whatever? How did the family tell you they felt the love?
Yes. I called and talked to them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Did they felt it for 12 hours, you're saying?
I was with her for 12 hours. That's how come I know. So I'm sitting there and the dog is sitting there. And we're sitting there together.
I hope my cats and other animals we've had,
in high esteem. The animal kingdom is amazing. So yes, you can. It's an energy that you feel. And I think hospice nurses know a lot by looking and seeing, probably, but what I do is I feel. And so it might be different for everybody. Because hospice will come in, they have maybe X number of hours, and you're like, really? How do you know? But they're used to seeing it a lot. Or if I'm really connected with the soul, I know they're, okay, now they're doing this and this and this, and it's only a matter of a few minutes before. But the soul is there before the body lets go. So this is an important point. The soul is there before the body lets go. That's a lot to take in, but it's really true. And I've seen this over and over again. So the way it was explained to me is through the process of life, we're building the new node for the new life. And when it is complete, then we'll go. And I know my mother was in the arms of the Christ before she quit breathing. And how cool is that? I mean, it's like we all imagine, well, maybe we're just going to shoot out into the universe at large and sort of look around and go, well, I wonder where I should go. But we're already there. And then the body can stop. So that I found that very comforting.
So that explains why it seems like for my father, my brother, and my mother felt this, that my dad had, his eyes were closed, and it seemed like he was in another place,
Yeah.
halfway there.
Yeah.
And my husband, it seemed like he was too as he was going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're just transitioning over to getting over there. But is that kind of what you mean by the soul?
Okay, well, my definition of soul. That's a good question, and I'm not sure I really know how to answer it, except for this soul of mine is like a separate little being that I can actually see her. I know what she looks like. She can talk to me. And it's not like we have this ongoing conversation every day, but there are ways that I can get in touch with her. And we're very much working together when I'm walking somebody across. That is what we do together. So it is the eternal part of us is the most I can really tell you. So anyway, she's sitting there looking at me, going, repeat after me. I am consciousness. I take different forms at different times. I repeat it. I remember that I take different forms at different times. So not to despair. I was having a rough day. Now, I mean, that's pretty hilarious. But the eternal parts of us are really eternal and alive and doing things. And from our perspective as people, we have a really hard time relating to that. A really hard time. Now, when I was little, did I have aspirations of being a soul passage midwife? I don't think so. Who would ever know? Who would even think of it? And what if somebody told me when I were little, oh, you're a soul passage midwife and you'll find out when your mother dies? I would have gone, you know, would I have wanted to do this? No, because I didn't want my mother to die. So sometimes it's better that we don't know things ahead. But really, we just don't know how great our souls are. This is a beautiful work. If anybody had told me I was going to do it, I would have laughed. I'm over here being a teacher. I dance, I do this. But who would think of this? But how lovely is it? What a beautiful gift. You don't know what beautiful gift your soul might want to bring here. Now, you guys aren't sick, so you're probably more in attunement with your soul than I was. But I'm only telling you this story because we have the capacity, the eternal part of us. We're extremely multifaceted beings. And the eternal part of us can do amazing things. And to learn about that is such a fascinating journey. And eternal is eternal. This part of us doesn't go away. Okay, next question.
Is it like the life force in us that's
That's a
eternal?
good term.
It's
Yeah.
not always Susan. It's
Right.
going to be somebody else next time or whatever.
Right.
But
Yeah.
that energy.
That energy, and that energy that goes out when we cross over.
That helps me.
Does it? Oh, good. So, and that energy, you know, after someone leaves and we walk in the room and it's permeated with enormous energy. It's beautiful. The beautiful part of us that's still in the room, withdrawing slowly. Yeah, that's a good question. How is it different from a spirit? I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. which my left brain has a hard time with. It did today. What if you don't know the answer to the question? I said, so what you want me to do is to bring a lot of books, a computer so we can look it up on Google. And it would have been very happy with that. But I can't find the answer in all those books, and I can't find it on Google. And so it's just as well to have the discussion, and I'm okay with not knowing. Spirit and soul, I kind of use them interchangeably, but it feels like spirit is more energy connecting, and the soul is more like a being, a light being. How's that sound? And I think there's lots of traditions out there that talk about these things a lot. And they might have a much better answer than I do. I don't know. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Oh, could we pass it back to the lady in the green, please?
So, my mother also has dementia, and I'm very close to both of my parents. My dad has macular degeneration and is losing his hearing, and he was the caregiver until about 4 weeks ago, and we had to put her in a small residential group home, and she's the highest functioning person there. What you talk about reminds me of the movie What Dreams May Come, if you've ever seen that, with Robin Williams. And it's basically he passes in a car accident, and he is transitioned into this place that is all what would be beautiful to him, the family dog that past meets him. That's what it reminds me of. Oh. I agree with the music thing because I've done music with Brad, and I've had a lot of family pass with cancer, and I've seen them be with a foot on each side, and I've also realized through losing so much family that we often have to tell them it's okay to go, and because they'll cling for us for a really long time. I guess my struggle is I'm so busy doing now, it's very hard to be, because I have so much to do to try it, because now I'm the caregiver, really, even though she's in the home. My curiosity with what you do, and what you do is wonderful, but my curiosity lies a little bit before hospice. And since Alzheimer's and dementia is becoming an epidemic, is there a way to do this work early with these people to help them go, it sounds bad, but sooner? Because I have to believe with my mother and knowing her history that, Alzheimer's to me is what do I not want to see about my life? What do I not want to remember? And I don't know a lot about her younger life. But I would love to be able to, and I watch the people in the home that are worse than her, and it really is as if they have a foot on each side. And I don't know, and we've talked about Brad coming and doing some music with them and some different things, but I think it would be a gift to maybe even be able to do the work a little bit ahead on the Long Bridge to try to help them not linger and suffer if it's a soul issue that they're dealing with. And I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, you're not going to like my answer. My answer is, when we have tried doing that, oftentimes the people stay longer. This is shocking. But what I get from it is, well, I'm already here. I may as well finish this, this, and this. And they set about doing it. It's amazing, really amazing to watch. Now, that's not to say that my experiences are universal. But we don't know what the souls are doing necessarily when they're in these particular situations. And it is catastrophic, and we are, I remember looking at my father and him saying he had a really serious stroke, a really massive stroke, 3 weeks before my mother died. And so then he came out to Colorado with me. So one of the reasons I was able to take care of him was because his left arm was still really good. His right side was paralyzed. Left side was still strong. We have one of those hospital beds with a handle up here. I don't know what they call them. And he could pull himself up and swing himself around, and then I could get him into the wheelchair. And I remembered looking at him one day as he was going really downhill. And I just looked at him and said, so you might try talking to the personality and just say, I don't really want to see you this way. And what I told my father was, Dad, if it's time for you to go, please go. If you get much worse, I am not going to be able to take care of you, and I'll have to move you to a nursing home. Which for some people, they really need that, and it's totally cool that people can help. But if he didn't want to go there, I wanted him to know he could just leave from home. And I actually physically had this conversation with him because I wanted him to really understand. And he looked at me and he goes, I didn't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you the way I was hurt when your mother died. Now, tears ran down my face. It was such a touching moment, and I said, Dad, I know that. I do know that about you. I know how much you love me, and I know you wouldn't want to hurt me in any way. But your body is giving out. And if this left side goes, I have no way of helping you anymore. He was a very large man, and I'm just... So that meant something to him. So I don't know with these long bridge people, if you talk to their soul and their soul thinks they can finish doing something else, they'll do it. I know that. If you talk to the person and there's some way you can get through to the person and say, if you keep on this trajectory, so to speak, this is what's going to happen. Do you really want to go through that? I don't know if you can even...
And she's heartbroken because she does not want to be there. She wants to be home.
Of course she wants to be home.
And even though when she's home, that's generally not recognized as home.
Right.
Home is a time in space.
Yeah.
When she had control of her life. But it's just very hard to let them linger. And we live in this rational place where we're trying to talk logic to someone who logic means nothing to anymore.
Yeah.
So.
But if you can connect with her soul, now, this is what I can tell you. I really don't usually connect with souls. If a soul is connecting to me, they're close to going. That seems to be my task. Now, you're the daughter. You may be able to connect sooner, soul to soul, than I would. And I think my gift is very specific, and they don't want me drawn into a lot of different places because then this part of it gets lost because I spend too much time doing other things. So it's a window of time for me, but you're the daughter. You know your mother. You know the depths of her heart and your love for her. And your soul can speak to her soul, and you, daughter to mother, can speak. And I would explore every way possible because you don't want to see her suffer. And
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. So you've spoken a lot about helping folks that maybe are at the end of a life process, so dementia, cancer, hospice, things like that. Do you see yourself playing a role for folks where things happen very suddenly? So you work in a very maybe acute situation like a trauma or something that happened to someone very young where they never had a chance to invite you in. They get in a situation where they cannot consciously ask you to come help them. Do you have a role for helping those types of patients? Or I guess people, I'm sorry.
No, it is the same. I can connect with their soul. But they have to be a certain closeness to dying. If they're going to, are you meaning if they're locked into their trauma for a long while?
So I work in an inpatient setting in an ICU,
Yeah.
and you'll see trauma patients come in, and they had no clue that was going to happen to them. You know, that was very sudden, and they may be require therapies where they are not consciously there. You know, they have a breathing tube, they're very heavily sedated. There's no way for them to say, I want her to come help me. Is there a role for you to come into that situation? But they are very clearly most likely going to pass.
Oh,
and that
okay.
becomes clear.
Yeah.
You know, that this is probably not something they will make it through. Is there a role for you, and how do you get into that situation, especially when like families involved, they may not understand,
Right.
you know, like how do you deal with that, and could you play a role in like the situation where I work?
Yeah, you can call me. Nurses can call me, families can call me, friends can call me. It doesn't matter if it's a relative or not. It doesn't.
I guess I just feel like in those situations, families are not able to hear a lot of what we have to say, and it's not they're beyond you explaining to them a service that you're trying to give them. Is there a way that you still see yourself playing a role and knowing that these people want your help, but they can't request it?
Right, but so I can help the person directly and the soul. We don't, if the soul wants help, I can be there. I simply need to know and have the name and the city and state. And we don't have to try to explain all of this to the family because it is too much. They're losing their loved one. They're overwhelmed if it's a trauma situation, and it's just, you just can't even, if they know ahead, you can, but if they don't know, I mean, if they're aware of this work ahead, you can, but if they're not aware, it's better just to deal soul to soul, and I can do that. I just need someone to call me and say, and I put in a prayer request in the prayer basket, and then as long as that soul is interested in connecting, then that's what will. So it's all by soul permission. It's not, if someone really doesn't want me to be involved, like the traumatized person, then it won't happen, but they might need something else, and I can just say, well, go over there or go here.
Yeah, I just had a comment on your question that this might be an example of, you know, part of Patricia's work is that we all can do this. So if you're in the situation, you know, and seeing multiple examples of this, she may not be able to call you for each thing. So this could be a place where maybe through your own heart, through your own, like going in, you could send that message to that patient, I believe.
Yeah, definitely.
So just by breathing in, sensing in, you could connect to their soul and say, I don't know, what could she say to their soul?
Well, you can be reassuring. Yeah. But the thing is, if you don't know, you're connected on the soul level, and that's the really key thing. I mean, you can't just sort of like have this conversation and assume that it happened when you didn't really connect with the soul. So that's why to practice and learn this. But these are, because it's an acute situation, I mean, everything is very focused. And if you could do that process, you could do it for everybody you walk in. That's absolutely correct. It would be wonderful to be able to reassure the soul and then help them go. Do I have souls approach me that I wasn't contacted about? Yes. Sometimes they will just show up, well, like my brother did, but of course I knew my brother, but he did show up. It was a rather tragic and morose thing, but not so much. I mean, it's more about, I think the focus of this work is meant to be to help all of us be aware that it even exists and to help us take the steps necessary so that we all begin to grow in this way together. Yes, ma'am.
Can you teach somebody to do this? Or does somebody just have to have a level of sensitivity that they've cultivated? You know what I mean? Can you actually teach somebody to do this?
Well, we're setting about trying to do that. And I can't say, okay, in 8 weeks you'll be ready to go. It is an awareness that needs to be learned and cultivated over time. But I do have processes that we can look at and practice and work with, and Erica has processes that we can work with, and coming together to be in this way and to realize that it is an important thing to do, then we can all help each other. Because really I'm only one person and it's just simply not enough. So that's my task now, and I have to tell you, it feels rather daunting because it's kind of overwhelming. But at the same time, it's so crystalline clear that I think, well, you know, often, and I've watched this, you know, I worked with the disabled for many, many years. That was the focus of my work in therapeutic dance. And I actually had a performing company of people with disabilities, and some of the people I was working with were developmentally disabled, but rather severely. They had lived their whole lives in an institution, and they came to me and said, "We want to perform." I'm like, really? Well, I was so taken that they thought of that idea. I said, oh, okay, let's do that. And I didn't know how we were going to do it. But indeed, we ended up performing for 13, 15 years, I don't know. Deeply inspiring work, deeply inspiring audiences all around. And what I can tell you that I learned from this, when I first set out, I knew it was going to be really important for them to understand improvisation. But I didn't know how long it would take for them to understand it, or if they could understand it. It took 2 years for the first one to understand improvisation. And when he got it, it was like, oh, it was the most glorious moment. And he and I just danced and danced and danced and danced. Everybody else was watching and watching. Then it was maybe 2 months later. Everybody understood improvisation. It was an amazing, amazing experience. So once one of us understands, you know, there's a little path. And even though the individual path may vary from that, there's something that we can follow, there's something that we can understand. We have this shared consciousness. So I think in coming together in groups, there is a way to help open to this work, I guess is how I would like to put it. And then there's going to be more work to do and awareness to cultivate and practices to sort of do over time. But I'm certain the point of me doing this or in meeting with people is to help open that gate and that process. So we have our work set for us, and we can begin. And we don't know when Erica and Brad leap across. We'll let you know. It took them 3 weeks, 7 days, and 3 hours and 27 seconds. And then we'll have a gauge. But we don't have that as yet, so we're starting on a new journey, and I think it will be a very fulfilling, very exciting journey, and if any of you would like to take it, I'd be thrilled to do it with you. Anybody else?
Hi, I have 3 questions.
Okay.
I'll start with one.
And
I
we
won't
have
hog it.
time.
Okay. There's a book I read years ago that changed the whole process of death for me with my father and 2 friends. And it's Journey of Souls, and I'm drawing a blank on the author. Destiny of Souls and Journey of Souls are his 2 books. Do you know the author? Oh, darn. Because I wanted to ask if your experience is what he reported. He's a hypnotist. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Who is it?
Michael Newman? Okay. Next question. When children die tragically, we add that word tragically because of our experience. I have a friend who's working with families in Newtown, and there's a feeling, of course, this shouldn't have happened because children shouldn't go before parents in that story. Have you experienced tragedy with children and what they, well, I guess they're not thinking on the other side, but what is their reaction on the other side? Have you transitioned with any children?
A few. And generally what I hear from them is that their mission was complete. And I know it's hard to take that in for parents and loved ones. But I don't get anything, that there's anything wrong at all. You know, there was a 3-year-old that just tragically died, just very close to where I live. The whole area was in deep, deep mourning, which really, you know, it's hard. And I think Erica might have something to say about this because she lost a son at a young age. But what the poem, and I don't have the poem with me, but the poem that I received about this little boy was so beautiful. I mean, you just couldn't feel badly for another second. He was clearly complete. You know, a lot of times children come in to finish just a short something before the next whatever, and I don't have this all figured out, what our next something is, because it's only, I only know what I'm given to know, and I don't have, you know, I don't know everything. So it's, but it generally feels complete, particularly with children, is the amazing thing. But you can't really go to the parents and say, oh, your child was done. I mean, we just can't quite do that yet. But maybe someday the parents could hear that and their grief would be mitigated much sooner.
I think a lot of them are getting there, but not all. So my 3rd question, can you walk us through, okay, so Mary in Pennsylvania sends you her father's name saying, could you transition with him? Mm-hmm. And you say, okay. So you sit down where and say what? Like, hi, Joe?
Yeah.
And introduce your, like, what does it look like?
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
introduce
that's
yourself
a good
and
question.
say, here's what we're going to do, and let's go? And
All right, we're off and running. Yes, as soon as I get a name, I fill out a little card that looks like this, and I put it in the prayer basket. And then I sing to Joe or whoever. And in my song, I explain what I do and that I'm happy to accompany him or her. If they would like some help in any way, I'm glad to help. If they have any questions, I'm glad to answer questions. I'm just there to be of whatever help. And then my left brain carries that name. I'm driving down the street. Oh, it's Joe. I don't know where a soul might pop in. Sometimes I'm in the forest, sometimes I'm driving in the cars. I could be anywhere. And sometimes it happens right when I do the prayer request. But I try not to make this stressful. And if I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I have to connect with the soul right now. And sometimes I do because they're really ready to go, but that's all right. If they're ready to go really right now, I cancel everything. And I am in my room, which is basically a kind of a cathedral. It's, I have altars and really beautiful things in there. And I'm there. I spend a lot of time there. And so if they're ready, I cancel everything else and I'm just there with them. If they're not quite ready, or I don't connect with them yet, then I go about my daily life, and but with this awareness that Joe might pop in at any time. And it's kind of interesting. They come at different times, in different places, saying different things, or not saying anything, just standing there or sitting there, or and we sometimes have conversations. Well, a lot of times we have conversations. I don't always remember everything. And to give you an example of that, I mean, I might spend, I spent 12 hours with the dog. That gives you an idea of I could spend a lot of hours with people. And I'll come back with one sentence. So I don't always remember everything that transpires. And so I keep this prayer vigil basically until they're ready to go. And when they go, when they're ready to go, I know they're ready to go. I don't know how I know. I just know that they are. A lot of times it's long distance because I'm in my room, like I said, unless it happens to be somebody in Boulder or, a neighbor or something. And then I'll just go sit with them until they're ready to go. Or I was working with a hospice in Boulder, and I used to go down and sit there, but they recently closed. And so it's the same as everybody else. We sit. We wait. We commune if anybody has anything to say. I sing often because that seems to be a key to opening the doors. And I send enormous love and allow whatever beings are out there to send energy through me. And then we see what unfolds. So it's a constant practice of listening and allowing energy to come through, letting it unfold, having a conversation, doing what needs to be done and not trying to make things that I have to do, because there's nothing that I really have to do usually. It's usually just a place in consciousness I have to be. And so then it unfolds however it unfolds. And I don't know what's going to happen. We might cross that bridge. We might be in the fog. We might be in the garden. Or we might be... I had one lady who went across, and this was a very conscious being, and really this was hard and really difficult in an interesting way. She was a spirit sister of mine, and we have known each other for many, many lifetimes. And she said, "Oh, I want you to walk me across. It'll be fun." I'm like, "Oh." She certainly didn't need my help. She's very fluent in all of this stuff. So when her time came, she looked at me and she said, "I want to take in the full glory and all of the energy present and really focus on this for as long as I can, learn as much as I can." And so here we are, arm in arm. There's a carpet stretched all the way across the cosmos, it felt like to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to be here forever. And so here we are walking arm in arm, and that walk took 3 days. So I don't know what that means. It took 3 days. But meanwhile, all this energy is flowing through me, and I'm driving up and down the mountain, going to school, doing this, picking up my daughter, and all of this stuff is happening, and I'm just like, oh, I must be really new at this, because I think really wonderful masters can do all this stuff, and it's not a big deal to them. And to me, it's like, oh, okay, I'm over here now. But it was beautiful. And so I think we have a lot to say. The angels very specifically said to her, this is your crossing, and you can make it whatever you want. So don't forget to do that. It's probably a lot like we forget here. We forget when we're there. Oh, we can do some things that we really want to do, learn some things that we want to learn, look at some things differently that we haven't looked at before. They're shutting down lights over there. So it... Okay. So then when I come back, I actually am tired, and I might have one sentence, and I've spent all of these, days and hours and whatever. But I'm really uplifted, and then oftentimes the soul that I went across with will come back to say thank you. And that is so, there just aren't any words for that. Because it's such a profound moment when we do this work anyway, and then to have them come back and say thank you is this is very confirming and very sweet. So that's a lot of what my days look like. Yes, ma'am.
Is the support you're offering then, it sounds like part of it is energetic. It's holding the energy, for helping that person hold the energy. And it sounds like part of it is almost psychological. Is that right? To reassure them they can do it, you're going to be there, it can be the way they want. Does that sound accurate?
It's yes. And if there are people who are having difficulty going, and this is usually, the thing is they're trying to get out of the body using the will. And the will is what we have to keep us here. And so it doesn't help us go to the other side. Allowing helps us to go to the other side, allowing the energy to move and to go. So if there is something in particular that they're working on, like the lady who really was afraid that her vision of God was that he was very patriarchal, and we've all lived through this great long time where that has been what we have been told, and so she was afraid to go forward and afraid to go back. So she was really stuck in a place that she couldn't move from. So I worked with her a lot just to sort of unhinge all the belief systems that were causing her to be stuck in a single spot. And it was because her husband was an abusive person, and she didn't want to go back to that, and she certainly didn't want any more of it. So if she could hang out in this place with this wall around her, she was going to be happy to do that. But indeed, when she really was freed, that was beautiful. So there's a lot of that kind of work. A lot of times people show up on my doorstep, actually, that are having difficulty. If people know what they're doing, they don't need me, except my friend who wanted me to share that journey with her, which was a great honor. So yeah. So we have one more question here, and maybe we have time for two. I don't know. We'll see. Sing for you? Oh, no, I can't do that. Brad and Erica have already been through this. I am really a closet singer, and yeah, right, but who are living souls. And Brad and Erica asked me the same thing, and so they had to just close their eyes, and I closed my eyes, and I sang what I sing. Everybody's song is different, and whatever you sing, if you sing from your heart, the loved one is going to hear it. There can't be anything wrong, and I feel very free to sing whatever. When I have some chants that I sing, I have some Native American chants that I like to sing, and certain other things, but a lot of times I'm singing, sharing information. It's just that it's more easily taken in song form, and I'm quite happy improvising, so, you know, that works quite well. Yes, ma'am, let's get your question.
An observation. First of all, my hearing's not the best in the world, and so this may have been discussed and I missed it, so forgive me if I'm walking on ground again. But I wonder if, is it possible that this is more for us than it is for them? And I know when my mother died, death frightened me, and I wasn't with her when she died, and that haunts me. Then my ex-husband was dying, and my son and I were taking care of him, and I made sure that I went through the death process from beginning to end. And I know my son will echo this. It was such a sense of peace. He had that moment, which often happens. Someone that's dying woke up and was just full of vinegar and talked our heads off, and very jovial. It was we thought he was on the road to recovery, only for him then to die within a few hours. But I do know the sense of peace and closure that I had, that I felt more that the experience was for me and my son than it even was for Bob. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's for everyone, and this is how we learn about death. And if we don't have the experience, how are we to be ready? It's and it is a great gift. I look on the times that I have been able to be present and feel such a sense of peace, and it's so just deep inside, and that's how the belief system of the terror can change person to person. You know, some of us are just, if we haven't been through a death passage or a soul passage, we're so afraid of it, and we don't even know why, but we don't know anything about it, and we don't know what to expect or what to do. But once you've gone through it, you know the process. You feel the peace, and it's not like you're walking down the street saying, "Oh, goody goody, somebody's going to die today." I mean, that just doesn't happen. We're here for a reason, and we want to be here, and we want to share the joy and whatever is here to be shared. And the lights are going out, and we have to go. So, yes, I think it's a wonderful way to learn, and it's really essential. Thank you all so much. My conundrum is trying to be able to explain all of this. It feels very challenging to me, and hearing your questions is very, very helpful, and I thank you so, so much for coming.